I'll just start off saying, you know, last time we got together, it was just the two of us having lunch in the cafeteria at the NFL. Who invited all these people? But the first time I was able to communicate with Roger was 1982. You had just started, I believe, as an intern in the PR office at the NFL, and I was covering the Cowboys for the Dallas Morning News. And in those days, which was the prehistoric days, you know, regarding the internet, the access to research was not that easy. So every now and then, I would call the NFL office, and the PR department would help me out. And one day I call, and I'm talking to Joe Brown, who was, at that time was the head of NFL PR, and he goes, "We got this new intern here that can probably help you out. He's really an ambitious young guy, you know, and he gets started here." I said, "Okay." He goes, "Hold on, I'll switch over to him." Guy answers the phone and goes, "Hi, this is Roger Goodell. Can I help you?" And I think I was asking you to do some research on the Steelers-Cowboys Super Bowl or something like that. But that's how our relationship started. I've known Roger for 35 years, and he knows that. I mean, I know he has a tough job. He knows I have a tough job, and whatever I write about him, he may not always like it, but he knows it's never personal, and that's what makes our relationship very special. Because
can I take a turn at this now?
No, I think I'm going to talk for the next hour, so you can't be critical of me. But that being said, Mr. Commissioner, the Josh Brown situation obviously has been another area of controversy, a black eye on the NFL. Domestic violence issue comes up once again that doesn't appear, or I'll take out the word appear, that was not treated correctly in terms of how serious it was. What can you tell me about that, what the league's thought process was on first only giving him a one-game suspension and now to the point that we're at right now?
Well, Gary, it starts with, you know, we revamped our policy 2 years ago. We've learned an awful lot in the process of how to deal with these, what are very complex issues. And the focus for us is to gather, obviously, the facts. But the first thing we try to do is try to prevent these from happening. So our policy is to work on education and helping people understand how to have healthy relationships, how to handle themselves in situations. And it's everybody in the NFL has gone through that over the last 3 years. Everybody, including yours truly, throughout the league, throughout the clubs. So education's a big part of that. And then the second part is obviously, what do we do when an incident occurs? And we have crisis response teams that are designed to try to first help the victims and survivors, make sure they have all the resources necessary, because it's a difficult period and we want to make sure they have that. The individual who's involved, obviously, same, to try to make sure they have resources available to them. And then the third is, what do you do when you have an incident? It's the discipline side, and the first thing we do is look at the policy and look at the incident and get as much information as possible. We have our own investigators. Our lead investigator on this is a woman who ran the New York City Crime Stex unit, incredibly well-versed, has tremendous experience. And then she works to get all the information, some through law enforcement, some through other areas, and you gather as much information as you can. Law enforcement has its own objectives, and it will have its own timetable. They will share what they want to share, and we didn't get a lot of information. And on the other side, we will obviously try to speak to all the individuals involved. In this case, Mrs. Brown didn't want to speak to us. She was speaking to the police. So we got the information last Wednesday, as you did. So when we make a decision, we make a decision based on the facts that we have. And if additional information becomes available, then we deal with it. And that's what we'll do now that we have additional information. We'll obviously aggressively pursue that and apply our personal conduct policy.
Based on the fact that Josh Brown was arrested a year ago, May, and then the incident that became very well known at the Pro Bowl, where he reportedly was drunk and was knocking on her door and security had to be called, wouldn't that have been enough to put him in a situation for more than a one-game suspension based on, in December of 2014, the league came out with this new personal conduct policy. In August of 2014, you announced that domestic violence abusers would get 6 games unless there was mitigating or aggravating circumstances. Didn't you already have enough information at that point, in addition to the first set of documents that came out in August, which I understand that the Giants already had, which means that the NFL already had? What more did you need to know at that point to make him get a suspension, more than 1 game, or the way I've put it and some other people have put it, Tom Brady gets 4 games for supposedly deflating footballs, and Josh Brown gets 1 game for assaulting his wife?
Well, Gary, I think you better look at the facts, and we have to justify any action we take. And you better understand the facts and the evidence that exists. So you're conflating a few issues there. And I would tell you that I think our investigators have a very good understanding of the information. They didn't have access to information, but neither did you, that they are looking at. And I think I will allow our investigators to get to the bottom of it, and we'll see. They made the best decision at the time on the evidence that they had, but it has to be supported. As you know, the union challenged the 1-game suspension. So we have to be able to support whatever position we take. The policy and the procedures and the penalties for domestic violence, it is the only offense that I know of where the second offense is banishment. Now, some people would say, well, why isn't the first when it becomes domestic violence? Well, in that August 2000, when I went out speaking to various domestic violence experts, they actually recommended you don't do that. They recommended that the first offense be 6 games. Matter of fact, they suggested 5. We went to 6. And then they said banishment on the second, so they understand the circumstances would be acceptable. But they thought that was very strong. They want, ultimately what you want in the domestic violence cases is to get back to a healthy relationship and not to make it even more complicated. And that's the hope, from the education through the first offense to hopefully you won't ever see a second offense.
Roger, what do you say to the criticism that from Ray Rice in the summer of 2014 to Josh Brown in October of 2016, that we really haven't seen any progress from the league?
I couldn't disagree more, Gary. Very easily, because what you see here is a policy that's evolved. We've learned a lot, but these are complex matters. And when you talk to the domestic violence experts, which I don't know if you do, but these are difficult matters to deal with. You have rights, you have families that you have to be concerned with here, you have privacy issues. And yes, you want to make sure that you're doing everything possible to address these when they happen, but you also want to deal with them to prevent them from happening. And so I think we've made tremendous progress. Can we make more, and will we make more? Of course. But society in general, we all need to do a better job, including other entities. But the NFL, I'm only responsible for that, and we have to continue to get better.
John Mara, who I know you're close with, and I've known for a long time to be a very honorable man with a very strong conscience and a lot of a bunch of sisters, a bunch of daughters. I know that he takes domestic violence seriously, but in this case, by the Giants' actions, and John admitting yesterday that some of the Giants' decisions were misguided, the way I look at it, if John Mara can make a mistake like this, then how concerned are you that some owners who maybe are not held in the same esteem as John could then make the same mistake?
Because, Gary, it's not just a club issue. This is a league-wide policy. So the league gets involved. The league investigators get involved. We work with law enforcement. We do the investigation. We will have clubs involved, obviously, when they have information that we need to have to make the best decision, but it's a league-wide policy. And if you look back at the personal conduct policy that we revamped in December of 14, it's had a dramatic impact. We've seen in the first year, 2015, the number of arrests for NFL players went down 40%. This year, thankfully, we're seeing another similar decrease. So what we're seeing is that the policy is working. Is it perfect? No. but we're dealing with very imperfect circumstances, very complex circumstances, and you strive to get it right in every opportunity.
Last question on this. Molly Brown was quoted in one of these documents that came out, I believe it was last week, saying the reason that she didn't cooperate with the NFL is that she felt that they were going to protect Josh Brown in this and not have her best interests in mind. Whether or not, you know, that was her true feelings or whatever prompted her to say it, are you concerned that going forward that it's going to be difficult to get some of these women who might be involved in these domestic violence cases with one of your players to step forward?
Gary, if you speak to the experts, and we have advisors and experts that we've been talking to, that is the most difficult thing, is victims and survivors. It's a very difficult thing to come forward and to give them the kind of circumstances where they can come out of a very difficult circumstance and get help. And so there are a lot of things and a lot of facts around this that are very common to other incidents that we see outside of the NFL and society in general. And this is a challenge that we all have as a society, to try to make it so that women who are living in this fear and this terrible circumstances can come out and get help and get to either a more positive relationship with this individual or a more positive relationship outside of that.
Okay. TV ratings. Been a big issue for the first 6 weeks. All across the board, they're down to varying degrees depending on the network. Some of the reasoning or theories, it's election year, the quality of the games, fans are fed up with some of the off-the-field issues, too many penalties, the Colin Kaepernick protest. In your mind, even though there's no definitive way to quantify what the exact reason is, what have you come to a conclusion on this?
No, and I don't think anybody can do that. As you say, they're all theories. I don't know if these are your theories or there are others' theories, but we don't dismiss any theory, if you want to call it that. I think we try to evaluate, and there are others that we actually look at that I think are very significant. As an example, one that you didn't mention, which is an important one, is the fact that the media landscape is going through some very significant fundamental changes. That's clear. So we look at this, and we look at this long-term, short-term, and try to see. I don't know if it's so much as finding a specific answer, because I think it's a confluence of events, and I think it might be any number of those things, that we don't dismiss any of them. We try to address all of them. But you have to acknowledge that NFL television ratings are still incredibly strong. We've seen primetime ratings go down by 36% over the last several years, and NFL ratings going up by 27%. It's not always a straight line, Gary. You know there are bumps. Election years, yes, we've seen some in the past. Is that a full explanation of this? No. What we want to do is figure out how to engage our fans on the platforms they want to engage on, and how do we engage them longer. That's the real key.
Have you gotten any pushback from the network so far about what the ratings are?
No, I just met with one of our network partners half an hour before I came over here, and they're incredibly, one, proud, two, pleased. Would they like to have higher ratings? Of course. They're seeing incredible strength in the advertising market, so it's all positive there. But yes, we want to increase the ratings. Sure.
Okay. Another serious topic before we get off to some things that might be a little more fun for you to talk about, the concussion.
I'm having a good time.
You know what I was going to say is, for everything
I expected this, Gary. So.
I know you did. What I was going to say is, Raj, from everything that I've read and heard, that the owners pay you pretty well, but is this job any fun?
I'm having a blast. This is, you pointed out, I started as an intern. I wasn't born a commissioner. I worked hard to get in this position. I spent my life working for it. But it was more than just a job. It was a passion. I love football. I love the NFL. My hero was Pete Rozelle, who was commissioner for close to 30 years. I wake up every day and pinch myself in some ways. But I also know that I have a tremendous responsibility to a lot of people, including a lot of fans, a lot of sponsors, owners and players and coaches. And it's a more complex job than when I started, that's for sure. I think Pete, if he was here today, would say it's more complex than he was doing it. But I also love the thrill of that. I love the challenge. And to protect something that's so important to people and to make it more important to people and bringing people together, that's a privilege.
The concussion issue, I know you've attacked it. You inherited it. You didn't create it. It existed going back to Bert Bell through the Rozelle years, the Tagliabue years. It just seems to be either a lot more focus on it, or because of the CT issue, a lot more of the older players that are alive now are suffering, and there's been some suicides. And I know one of your priorities is to try to make the game as safe as possible, but inherently it's a violent sport. Fast guys, big guys, guys with bad intentions hitting each other at high speeds. How do you make it safer than it is right now?
But Gary, you threw a lot of things in there, okay? Now, I'd love to go back and respond to some of them, but let me just try to go to the points that I think are important in this one. One is the awareness has been an incredibly positive thing for all of sports. Football at every level, other sports. My girls play lacrosse and soccer. They have a high incidence of concussions, and I see the changes even there in those sports because there is a greater awareness. And the greater awareness leads hopefully to prevention, and we've worked on that through better helmets, rules that will take out certain impacts that we think can lead to concussions. We have incredibly sophisticated injury data now that we never had 10 years ago that is giving us data that we can use to try to decide what rule changes we can make to the game and make them on every level if they want to. We'll share all the information of football and in other sports, in fact, even into the military. So concussions are not just a football issue. We've got to do our part and lead the way, and we will. And we share all that data. Second is what we do around the games. As you know, we have 29 personnel on the sidelines, medical personnel that are there to make sure that we're dealing with our protocols safely. We change our protocols every year when necessary, when we find something we can do to improve it. We share those protocols with other sports, and you see that. We have the ATC spotter that's upstairs that can go back and actually use video to help the doctors go through what they call the mechanism of injury that is helped in all of injuries. So there's been incredible advances in the protocols and around the game and practices and training that I think have also been helpful. And last but not least is the commitment to research. We just announced the Play Smart, Play Safe initiative, which is $100 million worth of investment in an engineering roadmap to lead to a better helmet in the next 3 to 5 years. We've also invested additional money in medical research on top of the $100 million we've already done, which is going to lead to better understanding of the disease, the injury, and what we can do, including some of the treatment issues, which are really, when it's treated conservatively, that's a real positive, because that's where they're going to help people get back quicker. I had my concussion in high school in baseball. They did nothing other than flash a flashlight in the middle of the night. We're much more advanced as a society and medical society as to how we deal with these injuries.
Youth football obviously is the lifeblood of high school football as the kids move up, and they be the lifeblood of college football, and the colleges feed the players to the NFL. With some parents nationwide speaking out in the last 5 or so years about, and the issue becomes, and a lot of players have been asked, would you let your son play football? Some say yes, some say no. What would you tell parents?
The vast majority say yes, Gary. You'd have to acknowledge that.
They do. But what would you tell parents today who would ask you, I mean, somebody that you would see on the lacrosse field at one of your daughter's lacrosse games?
Gary, I know the question, and I'm
Okay.
going to a youth football game on Saturday morning in my town. I talk to the parents. I know some of the people who are coaching are actually former teammates of mine. So we talk about this as it relates to sports and participation. I'm a huge person in participating in sports. There are risk in contact sports. There's risk in football to injuries, and you have to do what you can to manage that. And that's a personal decision ultimately. But I believe that the game of football has taught me values and lessons. I would not give back a single moment of playing football because it taught me about teamwork. It taught me about perseverance. It taught me about myself, And it was a game that is all the sports I played. I didn't get those same values out of that. So for me, football was a game that if I could have played and continued to play longer, I would have. I just wasn't that good, I guess.
And you had a knee injury too, didn't you?
I did, but that's an excuse.
So if a mother says to you, my son loves to play football, but I've been reading about these players in their 50s and their 60s that are paying the price for playing a game they love, how would...
Gary, you've repeated that twice now, so let me try to respond to that, because I don't think it's fair either. Because, you know, when you look at the average lifespan of an NFL player is 3 years longer than yours and mine. So, you know, our players, yes, we will continue to address retired player issues. As you know, that's been an issue going back for quite a while. I think we've made significant progress on that. We'll continue to try to do that, to try to make sure we help our retired players. But also, the better our protocols now and the better the medical treatment for our players today, the better their life is going to be going beyond that. So to us, it's about physical health, it's mental health. Every aspect of their life, we want to give them the tools and the ability to move on to a life that's very productive.
Odell Beckham, did you ever think you'd see one of your players proposing to a kicking den on the sidelines?
Listen, one of the things I've learned from this job, Gary, is never try to anticipate what's going to happen next, because it's impossible. But I think that's the beauty of the game in so many ways, that there's unexpected, unscripted events that take place on and off the field. And you know, this is just an environment we live in where there's so much focus and interest. You know, those are things that fans are interested in, and the players get involved with.
Are the officials getting a little too aggressive in penalizing these players for the celebrations?
Is that a question, or do you agree with that?
No, that was a question.
Okay. You know, I guess I would tell you, Gary, as you know, having been around for a long time also, that I think the term was called no fun league back in the 80s. This is not a new issue that the NFL is dealing with. You try to find a balance between natural exuberance and excitement, and on the other side, being a professional. And we believe in that. What these guys do on the field on Sunday or Thursday or Monday has an impact on every other level of sports. Kids follow that. Kids, they will actually go right out and do the exact same thing. So from our standpoint, we want to try to find that line. We've obviously tried to maintain it and actually loosened up and tried to give the players a little more ability to be able to express themselves. But there's always a line, and there's a line of professionalism, and your line may be different than mine, and everybody else in here may have a different line. But that's the challenge that we always face with this. I wouldn't put it on the officials, because the officials officiate the rules that we establish in the club. So it's, you know, our officials do a great job, but people like to put it on them. And those guys are out there doing an extraordinary job in very difficult circumstances. And as technology gets better, it makes it more difficult, because we're seeing more today than we saw 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And it's just as fast, if not faster. So you recognize, in my view, how great the officials are. So they take a rap, but I'm not sure it's fair.
A couple more things from me, and then we'll open it up to questions. You just came back from London, second game in London this year in two different stadiums. The third one's going to be in another stadium. I believe they'd all been in Wembley prior to that in the London area. What do you see going forward in terms of the NFL in London?
Well, you're right. We started a regular season series. We played our 17th game, I think, last week. So we've got 23 teams now that have participated in the series over the last several years. And what happened was, it was a direct result of the fact that the fans wanted to see the real competition. They call them friendlies in London. They wanted to see the real competition in a game that had meaning. And so when we did this, we didn't really know what to expect. But the reaction from the fans has been extraordinary. And we just, every year we try something new. We give them a new element, whether it's an event pre-game or whether we find other ways of which to celebrate the game and engage the fans, and they love it. Their sophistication of knowing the game has increased dramatically. They watch more television football. Our ratings up over there are incredibly high. And we're seeing great response to it. So I think our view would be continue down the path we're going of growing the game. You know, there's talk from time to time about whether we would ever have a franchise over there. I think if we continue to grow, it may be a possibility. What I would still say that we have not found a solution for, can we ensure the competitiveness of that team and every other team in the league and do that with confidence? That's the real issue that we have to raise right now.
For a long time, I thought there'd be a team in London before there was a team in Los Angeles again. And
yes, I've heard that question from you all very many times.
Yeah. But now I'm going to ask you whether there'll be a team in Las Vegas before there'll be a team in London.
I don't know, just the same as I didn't know the answer to your first question, which is Los Angeles and London. I can answer that one now, too. But listen, from our standpoint, we're excited about what's happening internationally. Las Vegas is something that the Raiders have been exploring. It's something that we're going to have to evaluate, and it'll be up to the 32 clubs.
Will it be another Super Bowl in New York?
I don't know the answer to that either. Ultimately, it starts with the two teams, in this case, pursuing that if they want to pursue it and submitting an application. And then, again, they have to present that to the 32 clubs. But it was a great experience for us. I like to say it was a big risk on a big stage, but it was a great event. I think the people in this area enjoyed it. But I also think it was great for the NFL, ultimately.
Any of the Jet fans that are here probably really enjoyed Deflategate and the penalties that you gave Tom Brady. As you look back on it now, was it more about having the powers of the commissioner reconfirmed, or was it actually about punishing a guy for something that one of your attorneys admitted in court, that the league had no direct evidence that Brady either knew about the deflation of footballs or was involved in the deflation of footballs?
Gary, you know, one of the things, and we obviously disagree on this, okay, you've made your position clear. So the number one thing here is protecting the integrity of our game, okay? The rules apply to everybody in the league, every team, every player. It doesn't matter whether you're MVP or you're the Super Bowl champs or any other team. They apply equally. And that is the single most important thing that the commissioner's job is, that's the responsibility. We had an independent study and an independent investigation that came back with the conclusion. We went through all the process because, yes, we do believe we have the rights under the CBA. The Second Circuit made that entirely clear. You may not agree, I understand that, but it was clear to us that there was a violation of policy. Second, it is an obligation of people to cooperate, and they must cooperate in the investigation. That includes not only cooperation, but also not destroying evidence. So those are the factors that we had to consider in this context. And we did that to protect the integrity of the game, and we'll continue to do that.
At what point do you think you'll go to a game in Foxborough again?
I have no, Gary. I'll go wherever I need to go.
Okay. All right, let's open it up. I figured I'd end on that one. All right, if we can turn up the lights a little bit so we can see who's asking questions. Michelle, are you here with the microphone? Okay. We still really can't see you.
I can't see, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see.
Yes. My question would be with regard to replay and reviews on, say, pass interference or penalties, because pass interference issues often dictate the end of a game. I think everyone could agree on that, or it's a huge play very often, but they're non-reviewable at this time. Does the NFL plan to do anything to address this, or would that be going against the referee's control of the game?
No, it doesn't go against their control of the game. It's been a determination, and this has been raised last 10 years with the competition committee, who ultimately makes a recommendation to the membership, and then the 32 clubs vote on it. There have been some proposals in the last several years about extending it to all plays. I think there's a great deal of resistance in the membership of doing that. Then there have been proposals about certain plays at certain times of the game. And I think what you're trying to do is you always want to try to get it right. You're trying to recognize that there are judgment calls that you probably are never going to be able to address and people will differ on. And you also are looking at the pace of the game and making sure that the game doesn't become nonstop. Let's just evaluate every play. Some of that can be addressed by challenges, but you want to also make sure that if somebody's out of challenges and you see a mistake, is that really what you're looking for also? So it's complex, it's difficult, it's challenging on a number of fronts for us, and as I say, technology makes it harder. But you know, I also have a great admiration for the guys on the field and what they see in real time. And do they make mistakes? Sure, they make mistakes. But the vast majority of these guys get it right, and they do a fantastic job. And I don't know if our clubs will ever go that way. They might, but ultimately it'll be their decision. But we have evaluated it.
What would be your personal opinion on that, though?
I'm careful on that because I think the competition committee, you know, I push the competition committee to consider things. Best example would be the extra point a couple of years ago, that we have a play that is an automatic play, and how do we add some excitement into it, and ask them to look at solutions for that. Because one of the very important things when you're looking at rules is what we call the unintended consequence. So if you change this, what happens over here? And that happens very often. As a matter of fact, there was a great deal of focus on the kickoff. The competition committee came up with how do we make the challengers, how do we make the kickoff safer? They came up with, well, let's put the touchback to the 25-yard line. So, of course, the coaches looked to see, okay, well, if that's the rule, now how do I adapt? So they started these high kicks, and the intention is to land between the 5 and the goal line. And early in the season, we saw an increase in returns, actually, opposite of what we were looking for. Actually, the data is now almost identical to what it was. And that's why you have to give it time to sort of see. And we look at these rules with 1 year, sometimes just a 1 year vote, so that we have to re-vote on it the next year to see what those unintended consequences are. So this area gets a tremendous, and we have Tom Coughlin, who's now in our office. He's working with us on helping us. I met with him actually today on a variety of matters for about a half an hour.
Commissioner, how do you handle all the criticism you get on a daily basis, whether you read the paper, you watch TV, or listen to the radio? People say that, you know, the worst commissioner, or like sometimes you're the most despised man in America. I mean, how do you handle that? I mean, it would drive me crazy.
You know,
because I know it's a very difficult job, but you hear it all the time, and you know, your only job is to make the owners more money. You hear that a lot too. That's the only thing.
That couldn't be further from the truth. And I certainly don't look at my job as that. My job is to continue to grow the game, protect the game, and make the game better. Ultimately, if you do that, that's what your job is. That's why I react the way I do. My job is to protect the integrity of the game. Yes, you want to grow the game. Yes, you want to make the game better for the players and the owners and the coaches and the fans. And that's not always something that's met with unanimous support. Okay? So what you do is you do what you think is right. Now, a lot of times I don't have the full authority to do things. So, as I mentioned, several things we do by votes of the 32 clubs. There's a tremendous amount of input. There's procedures and processes in our collective bargaining agreement. And so you do what you think is right. And I don't really worry about the criticism, frankly.
Thank you. Hi. Earlier you spoke about the theories that may have led to the decreased network viewership. One of those theories is that statistics in fantasy football people have become so aware of them, and that has decreased the quality of the play. I just was wondering if you could share your thoughts on that.
Give me the theory again.
That just statistics and fantasy football has been so viewed by the fans that it has influenced the game negatively, the way the players play, and that the rules are ruled.
I hadn't heard that theory before. I don't think it affects the way the players play the game at all. I don't see that at all, and I've never heard that theory. I think it does affect the way people watch the games, though, and that's a clear fact. And most of the time, it's thought of in a very positive way, because even if your team's not doing well, you're watching your fantasy team, and so you watch more football and you engage more, and that's a very much a positive for us. But I hadn't heard that theory before. My twin girls are 15 now. They play fantasy football, and I've learned a lot more about fantasy football this year because they're asking me questions all the time, and they're way over my head. But it's really it's remarkable fantasy football. I think that's a good thing ultimately for the game, because it's another way for the fans to engage.
Hello, Commissioner. As
How
a
you doing?
fine, thank you. As a season ticket holder of the New York Jets, I go to many games, and I also watch tons of football on television. And one of the things I do not like is that at the end of the game, where the 2-minute warning is, the clubs kneel down. And to me, that just takes an exciting game and takes the air right out of it. Is it possible to hopefully speak to the competition committee and possibly not have the game clock move until there's 20 seconds left on the play clock? This way it forces the team to get another first down and prolongs the game and the excitement of the game. Because sometimes at the end of the game, it's just really, boring. And I love the excitement of a game that's like with a field goal away. Thank you, Commissioner.
No, I understand. And actually, there have been some proposals. Lamar Hunt, several years ago, was very much on that issue, is to essentially ban the kneel down. So a lot of people have talked about that. The good news is that the games have been so close this year. It doesn't happen very often. But listen, pardon me?
That's when it happens. It's when the team has the ball back.
Well, yeah, but a lot of times we have games that are within 7 points right to the end, and they're trying to score. So, but I get it, and that's part of the strategy, and I understand your point. And it's a fair one. But I think the coaches have said, listen, that's part of the strategy to get in that position. And if we're fortunate enough to get in that position, we ought to be able to run off the clock.
What game was that? I think the Cincinnati game, and I think dispatching to an interception in the 2-minute warning. We just all walked out of the stadium because the Jets were out of timeouts, and we knew right then and there, with like a minute and 30 seconds left on the clock, the game was over. We would like to see a couple more plays, and hopefully the Jets get the ball back.
Well, I like your attitude because you want to see more football, so that's a good thing. So.
Hi. You're doing a great job, by the way. Thank you. My question's actually on marijuana becoming more of acceptable practice in Washington and Colorado now, and with the abuse of domestic abuse, you're getting 2 games, 6 games, but you're caught smoking marijuana and you play for the Denver Broncos, where it's illegal in that state, you can be suspended and banned, if it's your 3rd offense. So is the NFL looking, because the United States is going towards that way, to maybe laxing that rule specifically, not performance enhancing, but the marijuana, which they're realizing is actually helpful to a lot of these injuries and things of that nature?
Well, you threw a lot of things in there. Let me try to get a couple of them. One is, I think, first off, on the penalties, that's not correct. It's actually, to be banned for recreational drugs, it takes far more than 3 incidents, far more. Second, I think on the medical benefits of marijuana and other drugs, that's something our medical experts look at all the time. And our joint doctors, including the NFLPA doctors, they have not recommended that this is helpful in either preventing injuries or recovering from injuries. There are certainly elements in the medical society that say that, but I think it's not at the point where our medical people are willing to recommend it. So right now, it's not something that we're actively considering, but our doctors are always evaluating that. If they see that they can improve our either policies or what we can do better to protect our players or help our players, we'll look at it.
Hi.
How you doing?
You've had a lot of wonderful predecessors. Bert Bell, of course, Pete Rozelle, Tagliabue, and whatever. And each one of them has, of course, enhanced the sport and done their thing. In terms of your tenure now, which is 10 years, I guess, what would you characterize as your most significant contributions that have occurred under your administration at this time, and how would you like to be remembered?
Well, geez, I feel like I'm in my own funeral. I don't. I really don't. You've got the wrong guy when it comes to looking back. I really don't look back very often. Obviously, I look back to see what we can do better and how I can do better. But from the standpoint of looking back at accomplishments and putting marks down, I couldn't even. That's not something I do. We're too busy working on what we can do better and how we continue to take the league to another level. Someday maybe I'll look back, but I think I'll be in a rocking chair. So I bet it's just not. Although this is sort of, but it's not something that I'm focused on. So other people will probably make that judgment, including people in the media. But that's something that we'll wait another day.
Let me follow that up and ask you, you got your start in the NFL with Pete Rozelle, and then you were very close to Paul Tagliabue and had a very high-level position with him. What would you say is the one or two things that you learned from each of them that has helped you do your job today?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Gary. I got involved with football because of Pete Rozelle. I admired him so much because I think one of the things he was great at was bringing the ownership together and dealing with difficult issues and what he called league think, put the league first. And I thought that was really incredibly valuable, and I still think about that all the time, is how do we put the league first, no individual club, everybody together, we figure it out. Doesn't mean we all agree, but we have to get to a better place. And Paul was incredibly smart and is a lawyer by trade, but somebody that I thought helped the league deal with litigation at a very critical time, helped structure a labor agreement that still forms the foundation of what we have today. And he really helped propel the league on a variety of fronts. So I'm fortunate that I've had great predecessors. I think the game's stronger because of that. And I've taken away an awful lot from both of them.
Hi, Mr. Commissioner. In terms of expansion to London and the rest of Europe, I know it's going to be a great thing for the NFL to expand there. It'll be great for the fans, but I know it won't come without its challenges. And for instance, the game this past weekend, the Rams against the Giants, was played at 6:30 a.m. local time for California, which I know was a big problem for fans of the Rams. So I was just wondering your thoughts on that and other challenges associated with moving to London.
Well, there are, as I said, the competitive issues are a very important aspect of that. We chose to do the game. We didn't have to do the game at 6:30. There are a variety of things that when we do that, we're testing, quite frankly, and seeing what the reaction is. Like having the 9:30 East Coast, 6:30 West Coast, some people love, by the way. We got a very strong reaction to that. You also get some people who don't like it, particularly if they have to get up at 6:30, and they don't normally get up at 6:30 on a Sunday. So we get that. So not everything's going to be met with tremendous positives, but in this case, actually, that early window was received quite well by fans, partners, and others. It also is received quite well by our teams, who then can fly home on Sunday night and get back into their home city. And 3 weeks ago, when we had the Colts over there, the Colts actually went back and then played the following week, which is the first time we've done that in our series. And they won the next week, which is helpful, but it was another opportunity to sort of test the competitiveness of, can a team go over and play in London, come back and play the next weekend in the States, and not feel like they were at a disadvantage, whether they were jet lag or any other aspect of it. So one of the things we stress in every game is learn something from it. I don't know whether we'll continue with the early windows. They've been positives in many ways, but I also understand that there are certain fans who don't like it, and it may not be a great thing when you have a West Coast team, to your point. So that may be something we'll have to consider on that point.
Hey, Commissioner, I got two separate questions for you. First one concerning the Minnesota and Eagles game. I understand the players can't be rough with the officials, so how come the officials can be rough with the players?
Well, when you say rough, I'm not sure what you mean by rough. My money's on the players on that one.
What I mean is shoving. What I mean is shoving the players.
Well, and the players and the officials, the officials have a difficult job down there. When things are heating up down there, they're there with no equipment and they're trying to separate players. They're trying to get players away and move them away. So sometimes they're pushing people back, but I wouldn't say that they're at risk of hurting any of the players. We try to make sure that they understand when you come into a pack in a rough situation, be careful because they don't know whether it's an official or a player coming in there, and you can get hurt. So the rules are designed to obviously protect everyone and try to make sure that we're doing the best to protect the official safety, but also the player safety. But I don't think that we're putting the players at risk there.
Okay.
Exception might be Ed Hockley with those arms he's got.
Second one. Giants and Ravens game. I'm still trying to understand when Odell was celebrating his touchdown. Why is that called unsportsmanlike conduct?
Because if I recall correctly, and I shouldn't question you at all, but I think he took his helmet off. And so when you take your helmet off, that's an automatic penalty that the competition committee and the membership put in several years ago. So he can't take his helmet off until he gets back to the sideline.
Thanks for being here, both of you. It's really cool. Commissioner, are you concerned at all about, let's say it's the Raiders for argument's sake, ending up in Las Vegas with legal betting taking place a stone's throw away?
Well, I think the answer is yes. That's one of the things we're going to have to evaluate and see, does that increase the risk of something that could impact on the integrity of the game? So the answer is that's one of the things we'll take into consideration in the context of a relocation. We never like to see relocation, so there are other aspects of the relocation policy, including the stadiums and the market size, and have they exhausted the opportunities in Oakland to get a stadium done. So there'll be a number of things in there, but that's certainly one of the things that are going to be considered, and it will be a factor in several of the owners' minds. I think you have to, the influence of gambling, we know that exists throughout the country, throughout the world, and that's a factor that we're going to have to make sure we monitor very closely, and we do. We have policies, procedures to try to do that. Will it be increased by being in Las Vegas? That's one of the things we'll evaluate and report back to the membership.
Hi. I had two quick questions, and maybe you can eliminate the first one quickly. The one-game suspension that Josh Brown got, was that handed out by the NFL or was it by the Giants?
NFL.
Okay, so then what I need to understand, and I just don't quite get it, and I think you tried to address it earlier, with all the issues that happened, the Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, you had, I think, formed a committee of 4 women for your team to address these issues. And it seems like this guy was a good guy with the team and they loved him, but there's a lot of signs now we see it, that he was a bad guy. And, this is the Pro Bowl and everything else. A lot of flags out there. So I don't understand how 6 games became 1. How does that happen?
Is that the end of your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Thank you. Pretty much. I just, I don't understand how 6 becomes 1, and then you said that they fought you on the 1.
That what? Was it?
That the collective bargaining,
The union fought you.
the union fought you on the one game.
Well, they challenged it.
Challenged.
I guess you could use that term. But here's the issue: is that the discipline that occurred on the one game was for the event in May of 2015. That was the only one that we were able to get of all the different things that we've heard, and we now have new information, obviously, as of last week, which was released by the sheriff's office in King County. We look for all of those things to try to get to the bottom of it, try to understand what it is, and be able to support it with evidence, because that's going to be required, and should be required, by the way. You want to be thorough and you want to be fair, and so you have to be fair to the players, and you have to be fair to our own policy and making sure that we're doing the right thing ultimately. So the decision was made by our team after looking at it that we had the evidence to be able to support the one game. We knew we would get challenged, and we were able to uphold it. Now that we have new information, we'll look at that, and we'll see if there's anything that could impact either the personal conduct policy or anything we need to evaluate in the context of that.
Okay, thank you. And then the other real quick question, why did the NFL not allow the Cowboys to honor the fallen police officers, but the NHL franchise allowed it?
Well, we did. They came out arm in arm as a team, and that's something they wanted to do collectively. So we're about to start in the next 2 weeks our salute to service, which is to our military, which we've done for several years. We're proud of our relationship with the military, and particularly the USO over the years. We'll be honoring our nation's heroes and also our first responders. So we're proud of that relationship, and we'll continue to do that. And whatever we can do to honor them around our games and around the NFL, we're going to do that.
Okay, let's just take two more.
Each season, late in the year, it seems there's a key injury, a playoff team, a team about to go into the playoffs, or a team who's on the border of making the playoffs, and particularly a quarterback. And the roster seems so small that at the end of the year, it's happened multiple times where a team has to sign a quarterback off the street who has not been with them all year. There seems to be so much money coming through the NFL. Is there any push from you to the owners and the competition committee to expand the rosters so that late in the year they don't have to be signing players off the street?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's one that you balance from a competitive standpoint. As a matter of fact, I was just having this conversation with Bill Polian yesterday, and we actually have increased the practice squad to a large extent for that exact reason. So it's now 10 players where they're on their rosters, or at least in the facility and on the field, where they can know the system and make a quicker and better adjustment onto the field. But it's still going to be limited by positions. You're not going to be able to cover all those positions ultimately. The second is you want to have, and Bill was making this point to me, you want to make sure that you have the same number of healthy players from team to team. That's part of what the foundation of the roster limits are, and making sure that the competition stays the strongest. So everyone shows up with the same number of healthy players, and that's why some people ask, why not just increase the rosters to 53 on game day? And that's Bill's, who's been involved with the competition, and I think one of the great football people in our history, and a new Hall of Famer. That's the focus that they put in, and it's I think it's very good reasons. But I think the practice squad expansion has been something that's been positive in addressing, to a large extent, the issue you're raising. We still, though, as a league, just FYI, is we probably signed 300 to 400 players, what is considered off the street, so either off of practice squads or off of the street, that were probably in camp at some point, though, likely.
Just before, Michelle, before we take the last question, just to keep our people here happy, we'd like to thank the following sponsors again: Ray Cattina Motor Cars, Stressless Furniture, Kawasaki, Nissan 46, Edison Nissan, Route 33 Nissan, and tonight's food was provided by the House of Q in Hoboken. You've never heard me do commercials before, have you?
You're good at it. So.
Okay, let's take one more.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Commissioner.
Glad to be here.
I'm sitting amongst various young professionals I can see in the crowd, and as someone who has climbed the ladder from intern all the way up to Commissioner of the NFL, what would be one piece of advice that you would be able to give to us young professionals just starting our career?
Would you mind if I don't make it one? Because it's hard. But I would tell you that a couple things. One is nothing replaces hard work. You have to outwork everybody, and I believe that I could do that. So that's number 1, 2, and 3, really, for me, if you had one. 2 is to find good mentors. People will help you make good judgments, people that might give you opportunities. Work to stand out among the crowd. You know, if I was cutting up a newspaper, which is what I was doing probably the first time I met Gary, and pasting it on a piece of paper, that's how far technology's gone from where I started. But I'd always wanted to do it right. I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something in that article, so when the commissioner read it or somebody else read it, well, where's the rest of this article? That reflected poorly on me. So I cared about every reflection on myself in the NFL. And so I think that's real important. And then maybe last, I tell you, don't let anyone tell you can't do it. If you want to do something, do it. I went back to a homecoming at college and saw one of my professors who convinced me and said, please don't go to the NFL. You'll never get in. You'll never make it. And go to law school. That's what you should do. And he was standing at the door when I came in. He said, boy, you made me look bad. But, you know, the reality is people will tell you that in life. And if you have a passion in here and it's something you want to do, don't let somebody tell you can't do it, because you can. And you're going to go through rough times and you're going to go through challenges. Learn from it and get better. And people give opportunities to people who work hard, and they are working to try to improve the overall good of the organization. And I tell that to people all the time in our organization. Let's do what's best for the NFL ultimately, for our collective interest of the fans and the game and the clubs and our partners. That's usually a good outcome, in my view.
I will ask you the last question. It's clear.
2 more questions. That's it.
No, okay. From them. Clearly, you still have a tremendous passion for the game and for your job, but with so many issues to deal with on so many different fronts, and somebody mentioned the criticism coming from all over, how much longer do you see yourself doing this?
I don't know, Gary. You know, to me, it's about as long as I feel that I can make a contribution and give it 110%, and as long as they want me to continue on it. But there's a point where, you know, I think, you know, you have to be, you always put the league first, and you have to, I think people stay too long, and I don't want to be one of them. I want to be able to do what I can do to make the league better and go. But it's going to be something that I'll make that decision along with others and do what's best, hopefully, for the NFL.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming, and especially for Roger for coming. He doesn't do this very often, so we feel really honored that he did this, and I hope it was informative and entertaining. And when he gets mad at some of my questions, believe me, I don't take it personally. I'm just trying to get the best answers out of him. And then the next event we'll have here is November 9th. Ernie Accorsi, the former general manager of the Giants, will be here 5 days before the Giants induct him in the Ring of Honor. So it'll be a really timely event, and we hope some of you can make it. And we thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. Thank you all. Appreciate it.